Have you heard of the 180 method? Perhaps you have. I had never heard of it before until I saw it popping up in my Facebook group. A lot of people were asking about it, they'd heard about it, and so I was curious and did my own research. So if this is a method that you have heard about and maybe you're even considering utilizing or stepping into during your affair recovery process, I want to spend some time in this video sharing from a professional standpoint some ideas I had after reading about it, and maybe some questions I would encourage you to ask yourself before you consider using a method such as this. So stay tuned. All right, so the 180 method. First of all, it is based on a book. Actually, I think this particular author wrote 2 books. And if I remember to do so, I will paste that information below. I did not read the book. I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I did not read the book. I read a lot of online material that bullet pointed what the book shared, and pretty much every site I went to kind of said the same thing, just maybe small variations here and there. So I feel like what these websites were saying definitely followed what was in the book. So I felt like I was getting pretty accurate information. Now, here's what I understand the 180 method to be in a nutshell. And the concept would be, instead of what most people would do in the face of infidelity, your grief takes over, you are a puddle on the floor, you cry, you're struggling, you're probably becoming very codependent, you're holding on to your spouse for dear life, like I did, white knuckling it, right? And scared to death, and going to therapy and doing all this kind of stuff. The 180 method is exactly what you would think 180 would mean, is to do the complete opposite of those things. Meaning that instead of allowing, in other words, instead of doing what most of us do, instead you put a smile on your face and you live your best life. You don't ask them where they're going or when they're going to be home. You don't look at their phone. You don't track them. You basically act like everything's cool and you live your best life. And I kept reading, wondering, is there more? And unless the book has more that I'm missing, nope, that's pretty much it. It's the concept here, from what I read and what I understand, is that your goal is to become more attractive to your spouse. So it's a method that's to bring your spouse to you, because let's just be honest, it's not very attractive to be needy. And our spouse who had the affair is going to struggle seeing us in pain, because it pulls them into shame and guilt, and nobody enjoys feeling that, right? So being with us is challenging when we're upset and when we're hurt and we're traumatized and we're grieving. So the concept here with the 180 method is that if you are not those things, if you are, let's say, happy and easygoing and feeling like hopeful and things like that, then your spouse would go, oh, I like this. I like this version of my spouse. I want to stay. And I don't want this other person anymore, so I'm going to stay here. Okay, so here's where I find some challenges, and I would really encourage you to think about these things before you enact a method such as this. First of all, I'm very, very concerned what is happening for the health and well-being, and I mean the whole health, your physical health, mental health, and emotional health, If you are in the midst of trauma and grief and you're not allowing yourself free expression to demonstrate it, our feelings have to go somewhere. And if we don't allow how we feel to come out, and I don't know, perhaps they go into this further in the book and they tell you just to cry in your pillow and just do it by yourself and don't do it in front of your spouse. I'm not sure, but I'm really concerned with putting on a face. I find that very inauthentic, and actually authenticity is one of my core values, so I struggle with that. That's not authentic to me. And to hide how you truly feel from your spouse is not being authentic with them or authentic in the relationship. I think it's important they know how devastated we are. I think it's important that they know that their actions are harmful. Otherwise, where's the consequence for their action? I'm very concerned about that. I'm really mostly concerned with us, the betrayed spouse, and what that will do to us long term, and the resentment that could potentially grow out of this feeling of I wasn't allowed to be authentic in my pain. That's going to come back. I'm really, really concerned about that. Another thing I am concerned about is what this is going to do with honesty. I feel like a little bit of this is deception. It's almost a manipulation, if you will, of our spouse, because we are not being our authentic selves. If they choose to come back to us in this process because they like how we're behaving and they're attracted to that, they're actually attracted to something that's not real. It's not real. We are not okay. There is no way. I don't care what face we put on. There's no way we're genuinely living our best life in the midst of affair recovery. So what they're attracted to is not sustainable. It's not going to last. So they're going to resent us because they're going to come back and then they're going to realize they've been manipulated this whole time. So I'm struggling with how this method is a healthy way to live into affair recovery. Now, I don't think this book, reading the subject matter of the book and reading a little bit about the book, I think this is more about when you're in a marriage and you're feeling like you and your husband just aren't really connecting anymore. This method, I think, is to help us stop being codependent and to maybe pull away from those tendencies so that we're doing what actually is healthy and putting our energy into us instead of trying to control our spouse. Because a lot of codependent behavior is control. It's about manipulating the scenario to ensure our spouse stays in the relationship with us. So yeah, that part's healthy. But when you are talking about in the midst of affair recovery, that's a whole different ball of wax, in my opinion. But the healthy elements of this, and I will give it a little bit of props here, that healthy elements I see in this is energy expenditure. And I've talked about this before. Remember, we don't have infinite energy. We only have finite energy. And in affair recovery, our energy is being drained on the back end, kind of being siphoned off without us even doing anything, because we're exhausted, right? You're mentally exhausted, you're emotionally fatigued, your physical self is run down, and our energy is very precious. But when we're in affair recovery, sometimes we tend to just throw all of our energy into saving the marriage, into making sure he's being faithful, into becoming obsessive with where he is and what he's doing and looking at his devices. By the way, that's normal. That's not me slamming that. We all do it. It's normal. It's a normal part of grief to be obsessed. But we do all of this and then we're just exhausted. There's nothing left for us and the energy we actually need to heal. So if the 180 method helps you find healthy ways to heal and start pulling that energy back into you so that you can heal in a healthy way, then I think that's good. So there are good parts of this. But what I would encourage you to do is really think about what's happening in this method and if that is the right course of action for you. I'm not here to tell you what to do and what not to do. I'm just here to break this down for you from a healthy perspective, from a professional perspective. If I had a client asking me about this, I would encourage them to really rethink utilizing it. Now, again, I don't tell my clients what to do either. It's really up to them. If they feel like that's something they need to do, okay. And I'll be here for them to walk them through if this is what they really want to do. But I do believe you need to go into this knowing exactly what you're getting into. Do your research, do what I did. Just read about it. And those of you who have had success with the 180 method, feel free to comment on this. Again, this is not putting down the method. I'm questioning it because I myself cannot imagine when I was going through a fair recovery that being a healthy option. But hey, I don't know everything. And maybe I could learn something. So feel free to share if you've used this and it was super helpful for you, especially if you're years down the road after using this method and you're still in a great place. And I will say one more thing before I wrap up. The concept of becoming your own healthy, independent woman, being very attractive to your spouse is a real thing. Okay, it happened in my situation when I was separated, and the more I started becoming my healthy, confident self, the more attracted my husband was to coming back into the marriage. Now, I didn't do that so he would come back into the marriage. I had no agenda, if you will. I was just doing the work on myself. It was a natural, authentic thing. It wasn't a method I was using. It was just, I assumed we were moving toward divorce and I was trying to grow and be healthy in that. So that did help me create healthy boundaries for myself and do the work I needed to be a healthy, independent woman. And he was more attracted to that. And that really helped us reconnect down the road. So there are points to this that could be beneficial. I'm just not sure how I feel about the inauthentic way of utilizing it as a tool. I'm questioning the authenticity of. So if you are considering using a method like this, do your homework. That is my recommendation for you, my friends, okay? And if you are considering this, or you're looking for a coach or someone to walk you through things like this to make these types of decisions to do what's best for you, I invite you to schedule a free consultation with me. That link is below, as well as some free materials I encourage you to grab a hold of, as well as a link to my Facebook group that I would love for you to join. So, and by the way, my Facebook group is only for wives. I know a lot of husbands watch this. Unfortunately, it's just for women because I try to keep it very safe and controlled in that manner so that we can have safe conversations, just us gals, okay? But if you are a husband going through a fair recovery, I am coaching a couple of husbands right now. So if you are looking for a coach, feel free to reach out. I'll be glad to have a consultation with you. So do your homework, my friends. 180 method. If that's something you're considering, make sure you really think it through and ask yourself those questions, and comment below if you've tried it. I'd like to hear about how it went.